America's brightest and most beautiful.
It was almost as if he was on a mission.
The dispatcher said, "Sarge, we've got 2 dead and 2 dying."
A charismatic killer who fooled even his closest friends.
Well, I just been with the most dangerous man in the western states. Never had a clue.
And ran rings around law enforcement.
He was a master predator. It was as well planned as military action.
He's become the most infamous serial killer in American history. But was Ted Bundy born to kill? Ted Bundy was born Theodore Robert Cowell in 1946 at the Elizabeth Lund Home for Unwed Mothers in Vermont. 22 years old at the time, his mother Louise faced the social stigma of having a child out of wedlock to a mysterious absent father.
In order to protect his mother, her parents felt that they could not acknowledge the 3 months that she had spent in the Home for Unwed Mothers in Vermont. So he was raised believing that his grandparents were his parents, his mother was his older sister, and in his life that had to have been very confusing to him. He didn't know who he was.
When Ted was 4, the mother he thought of as his sister took him to Tacoma, Washington, to start a new life. There she married a military cook, Johnny Bundy, who adopted Ted as his own. It was in this environment of half-truths and uncertainty that Ted Bundy grew up.
His high school days, he was in a crowd where everybody else was a big wheel, but he never was.
We do know that he was terribly teased. He was considered not a nerd, although he was a somewhat handsome young child, but he didn't fit.
His basic personality, if there was such a thing, is shy, afraid to take chances, probably afraid to give away his inner thoughts.
In adolescence, Bundy finally discovered for himself the truth about his parentage.
Everything he'd previously been told to believe was in fact a lie. In those circumstances, it would be natural to distrust. It would be natural to find it very difficult to form lasting attachments to those people who had lied to him.
The young Bundy began to get in trouble with the law, committing a number of petty crimes and struggling to hold down a job. But in 1966, he enrolled at the University of Washington in Seattle and suddenly appeared to blossom.
He was considered charming, he was considered well-dressed, he was considered educated, and at that time, that was the only thing that people really paid much attention to.
Ted was popular at the University of Washington. His professors thought he was great, that he was brilliant.
Research has shown that the prettier people get the better grades and the better placements, and the not-so-pretty people don't do quite so well. And that, I think, came to the point where people, because he was such a handsome young man, basically overlooked any type of emptiness that was the core of him.
Anne Rule, now a best-selling author, was a volunteer at the Crisis Clinic, a suicide helpline, when she met the attractive, charismatic young Bundy.
Ted and I would work as a team. Ted was wonderful on the phone. He sounded caring. He was interested in people. I can still picture him hunched over the desk with a phone to his head. And many times we saved lives, which seems very ironic to me now. But I got the sweet Ted, and who would walk me out to my car at 2 in the morning when my shift was over And he'd say, Ann, please lock the doors. I don't want anything bad to happen to you on the way home. Well, I'd just been locked up with probably the most dangerous man in the western states. Never had a clue.
Dan Lazares, a young law student, shared the same boarding house as the seemingly bright and gifted Bundy.
The Ted Bundy that I knew, there were things about him that were special, I would want to say. Charisma. I remember thinking what a handsome man he was, and probably wistfully myself, wishing that I were so. I remember him being well-spoken, intellectual, unassuming, arrogant but unassuming, in the sense of, I would say, disarming.
While Ted was at the university, he met the woman of his dreams, and he told me, she's everything I want. She was beautiful, she was rich, she was popular, and he was really in love with her.
But after more than a year's romance, Bundy's dream girl began having second thoughts.
She realized that Ted wasn't going anyplace. He didn't have any real, he'd talk about politics and he'd talk about being a lawyer, but he really wasn't going anyplace. He wasn't carrying out things. And she broke off with him. And that just devastated him. That was the catalyst, I always thought.
Bundy took that rejection very badly and then went out of his way to find a way of wooing her back.
Bundy threw himself into the dynamic world of law and politics, gaining a reputation as a rising star of the Republican Party. All the while, he refused to give up on his dream girl. By early 1974, the now seemingly high-achieving Bundy had won her back so completely, they began talking of marriage. Then, abruptly and unexpectedly, he broke off all contact. On the 1st of February 1974, beautiful and musically gifted 21-year-old student Linda Ann Healy had been due to record her daily ski report for the local radio station. She never arrived, nor did she turn up for classes that day. When she finally failed to show for a family meal, her housemates began to worry. The police were called, and what they discovered was puzzling.
She disappeared. Her bed was made, but when they pulled her bed back, there was enough blood staining the mattress and the bedding that someone had to either be dead or seriously injured. She had been in her nightgown because there was blood around the back of her nightgown. He'd taken that off and dressed her. She was just gone.
Over the next 6 months, the Seattle police wrestled with the mystifying disappearance of the 21-year-old. Then one after the other, more young female college students began vanishing. 19-year-old Donna Mason was last seen heading to a concert. She never got there. 18-year-old Susan Rancourt disappeared as she walked across Ellensburg, Washington State College campus at night. 22-year-old Roberta Parks vanished from Oregon State University. 22-year-old Brenda Ball disappeared as she left the Flame Tavern in a district of Seattle. And 18-year-old Georgianne Hawkins, who was only days away from completing her first year of studies, mysteriously vanished as she walked between sorority houses after visiting fellow students.
All she had to do was come down 4 houses between that and her house. She never got down.
Each victim had center-parted, long dark hair. Each was slim, attractive and bright. Each resembled Bundy's dream girl.
Generally, there is a lot of similarity among victims of serial killers. Serial killers in general have a type.
It was almost as if Bundy was trying to gain revenge over this particular woman, a particular class, a particular type of woman. It was almost as if he was on a mission.
6 young women had simply disappeared, leaving behind only a question. How had they been abducted with seemingly no struggle, no clues, and no witnesses? As Bundy's reign of terror continued, the chilling answer would be revealed. (1974). In and around Washington state, 6 bright, attractive young women had been abducted by serial killer Ted Bundy. The girls had simply disappeared, leaving law enforcement confused and without a clear suspect. How was Bundy kidnapping his victims unnoticed and without a struggle?
He knew he had to create access to a suitable victim. But how would he go about being able to convince this woman to come with him in the car, to walk with him some way away from where she might be socializing with her friends?
The mystery was about to be revealed. Lake Sammamish State Park was a popular hangout for Seattle's young men and women. On July the 14th, 1974, teenager Dawn Sanders was one of many young girls heading to the lake.
Well, it was a nice, sunny, warm Sunday afternoon. We always like to go down to the park as much as possible, and my girlfriend and I, typical, we were 14, 15 years old, headed down to the park to see who was there and what kind of trouble we could get into, basically.
That Sunday in July, it was really hot, and the state park was always crowded on hot weekends. They would line up in their cars trying to get one of the few parking spots at the state park, and it's a very large park. It's one of the busiest in the state.
A friend of ours was approached by a young man in a cast. He asked her to help him get something off the roof of his car.
The girl was one of several to be approached by a man with what looked like a broken arm.
She was 17, beautiful, shoulder-length brown hair, brown eyes. She didn't go with him anywhere. It didn't go any further than that.
It's likely the man was Bundy, wearing a fake plaster cast. Witnesses saw the same approach made to an attractive lone 23-year-old.
Janice was sitting on a towel by herself, and a good-looking man came up to her and asked her if she would help get his canoe off his car. And he said, it's just up in the parking lot.